Welcome, weary traveler, to another tranquil journey into the depths of history, a journey designed not to stir, but to gently guide you towards rest. Tonight, we turn our gaze to a period often romanticized and mythologized, the American Wild West. Beyond the tales of heroic cowboys and daring gunfights lay a profound and often harsh reality. A daily struggle for survival against unforgiving elements and the relentless demands of a nascent frontier. We will gently peel back the layers of Hollywood lore, revealing the authentic rhythms of pioneering life, the true nature of figures who shaped this landscape, and the hidden stories that whisper from forgotten places. For 3 peaceful hours, allow your mind to wander, as we explore what it was really like to survive the Wild West. Segment 1. The gritty grind of a frontier homesteader. Imagine yourself, if you will, standing on the vast, untamed prairie of the American West in the late 19th century. The air might be crisp and clear, or thick with the dry scent of dust. The sky stretches endlessly above, an immense, uninterrupted dome of brilliant blue in the daytime, transforming into a breathtaking, star-studded canvas by night. But beneath that grand, almost overwhelming expanse lies a profound and immediate reality. You have arrived with little more than your will, your family, and a few meager possessions, with nothing but a seemingly endless patch of raw, unbroken land to call your own. This is not the romanticized adventure of dime novels, but the gritty grind of a frontier homesteader, a life demanding unparalleled resilience, unwavering perseverance, and an almost absolute degree of self-reliance. Your first task, an immediate and pressing one that overshadows all others, is to build shelter. Lumber, the common building material of the East, is exceedingly scarce here, if available at all. In this treeless, sweeping expanse, your home will be a sod house, a dwelling carved directly from the very earth you seek to tame. Picture the painstaking, methodical process. You cut thick, heavy strips of prairie sod, rich with tangled, resilient roots, shaping them carefully like oversized bricks. These sod blocks are then stacked, layer upon layer, with meticulous care, to form surprisingly sturdy walls. The roof might be a simple framework of saplings or scavenged wood, if found, covered with more layers of sod, offering a surprisingly insulating, though often perpetually leaky, overhead shelter. The interior of this earthen home would be humble, perpetually dark, and often damp, thick with the earthy mineral scent of damp soil and the subtle fragrance of prairie grass. Furnishings would be rudimentary, perhaps a small, crude table fashioned from a salvaged crate. A few more crates serving as storage, and your simple sleeping pallets spread directly on the packed earth floor. Comfort, in any modern sense, is a distant luxury, a dream yet to be earned through endless toil. The mornings begin early, long before the sun's first rays fully crest the horizon, casting long, ethereal shadows across your unbroken land. The silence is profound, almost overwhelming in its vastness, often broken only by the distant, echoing crow of a rooster from your few chickens. The high-pitched chirping of unseen crickets, the mournful call of a solitary hawk circling overhead, or the gentle, ceaseless whisper of the wind through the tall, dry prairie grasses. Your initial priority each day, after the dawn breaks, is water. If you are fortunate enough to strike a vein, a well can be painstakingly dug, but this is a laborious, often disheartening task, consuming weeks of effort with uncertain outcome. More commonly, you might rely on a distant creek or river, meaning daily arduous treks to carry back precious heavy buckets of water for drinking for the meager cooking you attempt, and for the limited careful washing you allow yourself. This constant quest for water underpins, defines, and limits every single aspect of your day. Every drop is precious. Then begins the back-breaking labor of plowing and planting. The virgin prairie soil, while inherently fertile, is incredibly dense and tangled with centuries of deep, resilient root systems that resist the plowshare. Your plow, often a simple, heavy implement made of iron and wood, pulled by a single straining ox or a sturdy horse, digs stubbornly against the earth. Imagine the sheer, unremitting physical effort required, the muscles aching with a deep, pervasive fatigue that never truly dissipates, the hands blistering and calloused. Each furrow opened is a small victory. Wheat, corn, or oats, would be your primary hope for sustenance and future prosperity, the only viable path to self-sufficiency. The success of your entire year's labor, indeed, your very survival through the coming winter, hinges precariously on the fickle, often unforgiving benevolence of the weather. And the weather, truly, is a constant, unpredictable, and often brutal adversary. Summers bring scorching heat, temperatures soaring to oppressive levels, the ever-present terrifying threat of droughts, turning your hopeful green shoots into brittle, desiccated brown stalks, leaving your dreams to wither. Dust storms can sweep across the plains without warning, colossal, suffocating clouds of earth, blinding and choking, coating every surface in a fine, gritty layer that infiltrates even the tightest cracks. Winters bring blizzards, fierce howling gales that bury your sod house under immense drifts of snow, isolating you for days or even weeks in a desolate white landscape. Picture the biting, cutting cold that penetrates every layer of clothing. The relentless, mournful wind whistling through the slightest cracks in your earthen walls, and the constant nagging worry about your meager food and fuel supply, wondering if it will last until the spring thaw. Beyond these grand dramatic storms, there are smaller yet equally devastating threats. Swarms of locusts that could descend like a biblical plague, devouring an entire season's crop in mere hours, are insidious. Prairie fires that could ignite from a distant spark and spread with terrifying, unstoppable speed, consuming everything in their path. It's the constant, relentless gnawing of pests, rodents, insects on your precious stored provisions is another ongoing battle. Medical care as we know it in the modern world simply does not exist on the frontier. A broken bone from an accident, a severe, persistent fever, a deep infected cut from a tool, a sudden bout of dysentery. Any of these could swiftly become a debilitating illness, or all too often, a tragic death sentence. You are far from any doctor, any established hospital, or any accessible, effective remedy. You rely on rudimentary home remedies passed down through generations, fragmented folk knowledge, and perhaps, if you are fortunate, the limited wisdom and immense kindness of a distant neighbor who might ride for hours to offer what little help they can. The sheer vulnerability to illness and injury is omnipresent, a silent, pervasive fear that underpins every moment of your waking life. Your diet is basic, repetitive, and driven by necessity. Perhaps salted pork, preserved from a rare butcher, dried beans cooked into a thick stew, cornmeal ground for bread or porridge, and whatever hearty vegetables you manage to coax from the unforgiving soil, if any. Fresh food is a rare, cherished luxury, often savored for only a few weeks after harvest. You learn to conserve every single scrap, to make do with minimal resources, to stretch provisions far beyond what seems possible. The constant, laborious challenge of food preservation, whether through drying, salting, or smoking, consumes a significant portion of your time and effort. There is no store just down the road. Your self-reliance is not a virtue, but an absolute necessity for survival. And then, there are the dangers that extend beyond the relentless elements and the limitations of your own resources. While less common than the sensationalized narratives of popular fiction might suggest, the implicit threat from opportunistic outlaws, desperate drifters, or even sudden conflicts with indigenous tribes was a real, if sporadic, concern. The profound isolation of your homestead meant that you were largely alone, relying solely on your own courage, a well-worn rifle, and simple, often inadequate, means of defense. The sound of an unannounced approaching rider in the vast silence, or a distant, unexpected gunshot echoing across the plains, could send a cold shiver of unease through the profound prairie quiet, transforming a moment of peace into one of anxious vigilance. Life on the frontier was a relentless, grinding cycle of back-breaking labor, a constant battle against the unpredictable and often brutal forces of nature and the psychological weight of profound isolation. It demanded an unparalleled degree of self-reliance, almost superhuman physical stamina, and an unyielding mental fortitude. It was a daily struggle for existence, a testament to the sheer bowed human will to survive and to carve a semblance of a life from the untamed wilderness, where every small comfort was not a given, but earned only through immense continuous effort and unwavering hope.
From the arduous, anonymous struggle of the homesteader, we now pivot to a figure whose name echoes with both notoriety and a peculiar kind of legend across the American West. we turn to Jesse James, a name synonymous with train robberies, bank heists, and a life lived on the fringes of the law. His was a truly tumultuous journey, from a turbulent youth to a violent end. Aping his image as both a feared outlaw and, for many, a defiant folk hero. Imagine the Missouri landscape of the mid-19th century, a place deeply scarred by the brutal divisions of the American Civil War. Jesse Woodson James was born into this volatile environment in 1847. His family, like many in Missouri, was caught in the bitter partisan conflict between pro-Union and pro-Confederate factions. A conflict often fought with ruthless guerrilla tactics. As a teenager, Jesse became entangled with Confederate bushwhackers, irregular forces who engaged in brutal raids and skirmishes. Picture a young man barely out of boyhood, exposed to intense violence and lawlessness, witnessing acts that would undoubtedly harden his spirit and shape his perception of authority and justice. These formative years, steeped in conflict and guerrilla warfare, instilled in him a profound distrust of federal power and a willingness to resort to violence. After the war's end in 1865, many former Confederates found it difficult to reintegrate into civilian life. The Reconstruction era was a time of immense social and economic upheaval, particularly in border states like Missouri. Jesse, along with his elder brother Frank and other former bushwhackers, soon turned to a life of crime. Their first documented bank robbery occurred in Liberty, Missouri in 1866, marking the beginning of a remarkable and terrifying criminal career. Imagine the sudden chaotic scene. The thunder of horses' hooves, the shouts, the glint of pistols, and the desperate scramble for money. The James Younger Gang, as they became known, quickly gained infamy across the Midwest. Their targets were often symbols of the New Order, banks that they saw as extensions of Union power, and railroads that represented burgeoning corporate wealth. Visualize a train rumbling through the quiet night, suddenly brought to a halt by masked riders, the passengers slowly divested of their valuables. Or a quiet country bank, suddenly overrun by armed men demanding its contents. These were not always sophisticated operations, were often brutal. Direct confrontations designed to instill fear and achieve rapid results. The sheer audacity and frequency of their crimes captured public attention. What propelled Jesse James into the realm of legend, however, was not just his criminal activity, but the complex, often contradictory public perception that grew around him. For many former Confederates and disaffected rural populations, Jesse and his gang became symbols of resistance against perceived injustices and the changing social order. Imagine the hushed conversations in small towns, the rumors spreading about his latest exploit. Tales whispered with a mixture of fear and admiration. Newspapers, eager for sensational stories, often exaggerated his exploits, painting him as a daring rogue, a sort of Robin Hood figure who defied the powerful. Yet, for law enforcement and the victims of his crimes, he was simply a dangerous, ruthless bandit, responsible for widespread terror and bloodshed. The gang's operations spanned over a decade, marked by periods of intense activity and times of quiet dormancy as they evaded pursuit. Law enforcement, including the newly formed Pinkerton National Detective Agency, launched relentless hunts for the gang. Imagine the relentless pressure, the constant need to move, to stay one step ahead of the relentless pursuit. This life on the run meant constant vigilance, living under assumed names, and never truly knowing peace. The constant stress and paranoia would inevitably take their toll, leading to internal tensions within the gang itself. The end for Jesse James came not in a dramatic shootout with lawmen, but through an act of betrayal. By the early 1880s, the gang had dwindled. Their notoriety had made continued operations increasingly difficult. On April 3, 1882, Jesse James was at his home in St. Joseph, Missouri, under an assumed name, living with his wife and children. Robert Ford, a new recruit to the gang who hoped to collect a considerable bounty on James's head, shot him in the back of the head as he straightened a picture on the wall. Imagine the sudden, unexpected report of the gunshot shattering the domestic quiet, bringing an abrupt and ignominious end to a life defined by violence. The death of Jesse James only solidified his place in American folklore. His life, though steeped in criminality and violence, became a powerful narrative reflecting the profound societal dislocations and grievances of post-Civil War America. He remains a polarizing figure, testament to how the chaos of history can transform a dangerous individual into a complex, enduring legend in the collective memory. From the tumultuous life of an individual outlaw, whose legend was shaped by the chaos of his time, we now shift our focus to the landscape itself, where silent, decaying monuments stand as testament to forgotten dreams and vanished communities. We turn our attention to the eerie and abandoned ghost towns of the American West, places where the whispers of forgotten fortunes still seem to linger, carried softly on the dry, persistent wind. Imagine a tranquil journey, perhaps by car or on foot, through the quiet, desolate expanses of states like Nevada, Colorado, Arizona, or California. You might travel for what feels like endless miles through an empty, unblemished landscape, with only the distant mountains for company, before suddenly, almost magically, on the horizon, a cluster of weathered wooden buildings appears. They stand stark and resolute against the vast open sky, like specters of a former age. This is a ghost town, a place seemingly frozen in time. Its streets empty, its windows dark, often boarded up like vacant eyes. The only sounds are often the gentle creak of a loose shutter rattling in the breeze, the dry rustle of tumbleweeds rolling across what was once a bustling thoroughfare, and the ceaseless, almost mournful whisper of the wind carrying unseen echoes of a bygone era. These towns rarely began as quiet, abandoned places. On the contrary, they were born of immense hope, of relentless human ambition, and most often of a single, intoxicating discovery. The glint of gold, the shimmer of silver, or the promise of other precious minerals like copper or lead lying hidden beneath the Earth's surface. Picture the initial, frenzied rush that would follow such a discovery. News of a major strike. Perhaps just a rumor, spreading like wildfire from one mining camp to the next, and then across the continent, drawing thousands upon thousands of eager prospectors. Experienced miners and shrewd entrepreneurs from diverse backgrounds and distant lands. Tent cities would spring up almost overnight, a temporary, chaotic explosion of human activity. These would quickly give way to more substantial, though often still ramshackle, wooden shacks, and then, if the strike proved rich enough, two more permanent, albeit quickly erected, wooden structures. The very air in these burgeoning settlements would have been vibrant with a cacophony of sound. The rhythmic chipping of stone from new excavations, the creak of wooden scaffolding rising, the distant clang of blacksmiths shaping tools, the shouts of men directing teams of mules or horses, and the unmistakable jingle of newly minted coins changing hands. Saloons would operate 24 hours a day, fueled by endless optimism and cheap liquor. General stores would burst with all manner of goods, from picks and shovels to canned food and bolts of fabric. And the local assay office, where ore was tested and claims were validated, would be a constant hub of nervous excitement, shattered dreams, and sudden fortunes. These were places of feverish, almost desperate activity, fueled by the intoxicating promise of immense wealth. However, the prosperity of these boomtowns was almost universally fleeting and tragically ephemeral. Their very existence was dependent entirely on the finite nature of the mineral deposits beneath the earth. Imagine the relentless, back-breaking toil in the mines. The dark, claustrophobic tunnels, often hundreds of feet. Below ground, the constant danger of collapse from shifting earth or unstable rock. The flickering, dancing light of oil lamps, casting eerie shadows, and the pervasive, insidious dust that settled deep in the miner's lungs, leading to long-term illness. For a few short years, perhaps even a decade or two, if the load was exceptionally rich, the ore would flow from the earth. Money would change hands freely, dreams would be made and broken with astonishing speed. Grand buildings might even be ambitiously erected. A more substantial hotel with a proper dining room, a community church with a steeple. Perhaps even an opera house or a Masonic lodge, all symbols of a community that was for a time utterly convinced of its own permanence and future. But then, inevitably, the veins of precious ore would begin to thin. The rich, easily accessible deposits would become harder to find, deeper, and therefore significantly more expensive to extract. The costs of labor, of timber for supports, of machinery maintenance, and of transportation would start to outweigh the dwindling returns from the diminishing or imagine the subtle, almost imperceptible shift in the town's atmosphere. A saloon might have fewer patrons, its laughter less boisterous. A general store might see fewer customers, its shelves less frequently replenished. The once constant, reassuring sound of the stamping mill, pulverizing ore, might become less frequent, or even fall silent altogether. Hope once so abundant would gradually give way to uncertainty, then to quiet resignation, and finally to a palpable sense of doom. The factors that led to their ultimate demise were often numerous and interconnected, creating a perfect storm of decline. The primary cause, as mentioned, was almost always the simple depletion of the profitable mineral resources. But other powerful forces could also contribute to or accelerate their abandonment. A sudden, catastrophic drop in the global market price of the commodity they mined, making extraction unprofitable overnight. A devastating fire, an all-too-common occurrence in towns built of dry wood, could sweep through the wooden structures, wiping out livelihoods and homes in a terrifying conflagration, often leaving residents without the means or will to rebuild. Lack of reliable water sources in an arid landscape, or the building of a new railroad bypass that left the town isolated and cut off from vital supply lines and markets, could also seal its fate. Imagine the slow, painful exodus that would follow. Families packing up their few precious belongings onto creaking wagons, store owners locking their doors for the very last time, the sound of wagon wheels slowly fading into the distance, leaving only echoes in their wake. It was not a sudden apocalyptic event that emptied these towns, but a gradual, silent draining of life, a slow, methodical abandonment. Today, these ghost towns stand as poignant archaeological remnants, silent witnesses to a bygone era. As you walk through the dust-filled streets, the only sounds the crunch of your own footsteps, you might see the decaying remains of a saloon, its counter still stained with the ghosts of forgotten drinks, or a general store with empty, sagging shelves and a rusted cash register. Perhaps a post office still bears the faded, weathered sign of its former purpose, or a miner's shack contains a few discarded tools, a broken pickaxe, and a rusty bed frame, hinting at a life abruptly ceased. Each individual object, each silent, crumbling building, whispers a fragment of a forgotten story, a life once lived with passion and struggle. Archaeologists carefully and respectfully document these sites, meticulously piecing together the daily lives of the residents, what they ate from discarded tins, how they worked from the tools left behind, what they valued from the personal items discovered. The foundations of former structures, scattered glass bottles, fragments of pottery, and rusted pieces of machinery all offer tangible, intimate connections to the people who once filled these spaces with their dreams, their toil, and their laughter. These ghost towns serve as powerful, melancholic reminders of the boom and bust cycles that so dramatically characterize the rapid and often chaotic expansion of the American West. They are striking monuments to human ambition, to incredible resilience in the face of daunting odds, and ultimately to the inherently transient nature of prosperity when built upon a singular, finite resource. They stand as silent, weathered witnesses to the swift and unforgiving passage of time, and the quiet, almost hypnotic allure of forgotten fortunes, inviting contemplation on the fleeting nature of human endeavors in the face of vast, indifferent landscapes. From the quiet desolation of the ghost towns and the arduous struggle of the homesteader, we now ascend to a different stratum of the Wild West, a world of immense wealth, sweeping ambition, and unparalleled power. We turn our attention to the tycoon's empire, a landscape shaped not by pickaxes and sod houses, but by vast networks of steel rails, sprawling ranches, and the powerful figures often referred to as robber barons who built fortunes and influenced the destiny of a nation. Imagine for a moment the stark contrast. While homesteaders toiled in isolation and miners chased fleeting dreams, these powerful individuals operated on a grand scale, envisioning empires carved from the vastness of the continent. Their lives were a world away from the gritty existence of the common person. Picture a private rail car, sumptuously appointed with velvet seats, polished wood, and shimmering brass fixtures, gliding smoothly across the newly laid tracks. Inside, a railroad magnate, perhaps a figure like Leland Stanford or Collis P. Huntington, would be discussing vast sums, strategic routes, and the acquisition of even more land. The air in such a car would be thick with the scent of fine cigars and the quiet hum of powerful men shaping the future. The driving force behind much of this new wealth was the Transcontinental Railroad. This was not merely a mode of transport, it was a colossal engineering feat and an engine of economic transformation. Imagine thousands of laborers, many of them Irish immigrants or Chinese workers, toiling relentlessly to lay tracks across mountains and deserts. The work was brutal, dangerous, and often fatal, yet it created an artery that connected east to west, transforming isolated territories into accessible markets. For the tycoons, these railroads were not just lines on a map, but pathways to immense profit, controlling the flow of goods, people, and information. They acquired vast tracts of land along the proposed routes. Knowing that the very presence of the railroad would inflate land values and create new towns from which they would profit, beyond railroads, the expansion of the West also fueled the growth of immense cattle ranches. Imagine a ranch covering hundreds of thousands of acres, stretching as far as the eye could see, populated by thousands of longhorn cattle. These were not the small herds of struggling farmers, but colossal operations managed by powerful cattle barons. The air would carry the scent of dust, leather, and distant cattle, a different kind of vastness than the prairie farm. The daily rhythm was dictated by the movement of herds, the branding of calves, and the arduous cattle drives that transported livestock to railheads for shipment to distant markets. The sheer scale of these operations required extensive capital, political influence, a keen eye for land acquisition, often at minimal cost. These robber barons were figures of immense ambition and often ruthless business practices. Their critics accused them of exploiting workers, monopolizing industries, and manipulating politicians to serve their own ends. Imagine a powerful magnate dressed in the finest tailored suits, attending a lavish dinner party in a grand city mansion, while simultaneously orchestrating a deal that would crush a smaller competitor or secure a favorable land grant from the government. The cutthroat world of finance and industry often involved aggressive tactics, hostile takeovers, and the accumulation of wealth on an unprecedented scale. Their power was not always derived from innovation alone, but often from strategic control of vital resources and infrastructure. Their luxurious lifestyles stood in stark contrast to the hardships faced by most. Imagine grand estates built in burgeoning western cities or in the established East, complete with multiple servants, imported furnishings, and elaborate gardens. Their social calendars would be filled with exclusive balls, private theatrical performances, and leisurely trips abroad, far removed from the dust and struggle of the frontier. While the homesteader dreamed of a successful harvest, the tycoon contemplated expanding his railroad empire across another state or cornering the market in a crucial commodity. Their decisions, made from the comfort of their opulent offices or private residences, reverberated across thousands of miles, shaping the economic landscape for generations. These figures, whether viewed as visionary industrialists or unscrupulous monopolists, undeniably played a pivotal role in the development of the American West. They built the infrastructure, created the industries, and opened the markets that transformed a vast wilderness into an integral part of a burgeoning nation. Their legacy is complex, marked by both immense progress and significant social inequality. The tycoons' empires, built on railroads, vast ranches, and sometimes questionable practices, stood as powerful counterpoints to the more humble, yet equally determined efforts of those who sought their fortunes and futures on the open plains. As our gentle journey through the realities of the Wild West draws to a close, we can now appreciate the profound and often surprising layers that defined this iconic period. We began by immersing ourselves in the gritty, relentless grind of a frontier homesteader, experiencing the daily struggle against unforgiving elements and the profound isolation that shaped their lives. We then delved into the tumultuous journey of Jesse James, a figure of notoriety whose life and death reflected the deep societal scars of his time. We wandered through the eerie silence of ghost towns, witnessing the rise and fall of boom and bust cycles, and pondering the ephemeral nature of ambition. Finally, we ascended to the vast, opulent world of the tycoons, exploring the empires built by railroad magnates and cattle barons, whose immense wealth and power starkly contrasted with the experiences of the common westward traveler. From the dirt floor of a sod house to the plush confines of a private rail car, from the silence of an abandoned mine to the roar of a stampeding herd, the American West was a landscape of extremes. It was a place that demanded resilience, adaptability, and often an unyielding will to survive. Their world, though distant, offers us a quiet reflection on themes of struggle, ambition, change, and the persistent human drive to carve out a life or an empire from the vastness of the unknown. As you drift now, let these images of the American West settle gently in your mind. It's the endless prairie wind, the distant rumble of a train. It's the whisper of forgotten names, the quiet determination of those who lived and built there. Rest deeply, knowing that the complexities of history, though sometimes challenging, can also be a calming companion as you journey towards a peaceful and restorative sleep. Good night. Close your eyes if you wish, and let your mind drift back to a time long before the world you know. Tonight, we journey to ancient Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization, where the first cities rose from the dusty plains between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. This is a land of relentless sun, of mud brick villages, of empires born and lost. In this soothing exploration, we'll walk the fields of a Sumerian farmer, trace the rise of a legendary king, ponder the mysteries of ancient records, and step into the opulent courts of the elite. Let the rhythm of their lives, their struggles, and their triumphs carry you gently into the past as you relax and perhaps drift towards sleep. Imagine yourself there, in a world both familiar and strange, where every day was a constant struggle for survival. Let's begin. Why you wouldn't last a day in a Mesopotamian village. Imagine yourself waking just before dawn, air already thick with the warmth of a Mesopotamian morning. Around 3000 BCE, you're in a small Sumerian village, nestled along the banks of the Euphrates, in a land we now call southern Iraq. Your home is a modest structure of sun-baked mud brick, its walls rough and cool to the touch, pocked with the texture of straw mixed into the clay. The single room is dimly lit by the faint, flickering glow of a clay lamp, its wick burning low on sesame oil, casting long shadows across the packed dirt floor. The air inside is heavy, carrying the earthy scent of dust and straw, mingled with the faint, lingering temps of yesterday's meal pot of barley porridge left cooling by the hearth. You rise from a woven reed mat, your only bedding, its fibers pressing into your skin, leaving faint imprints that itch slightly as you stir. Your body feels stiff, your muscles aching from a lifetime of labor, a reminder that rest is fleeting in this world. This is your life as a Sumerian farmer, and it is a life defined by the relentless rhythm of survival, bound to the land and the river. You stretch, feeling the creak of your joints, and pull on a simple kilt made of coarse linen, its fibers scratching against your skin, worn and patched from years of use. The kilt is tied with a belt of twisted reeds rough against your waist. You slip your feet into sandals woven from palm fronds, their edges fraying from constant wear. As you step outside, the first rays of sunlight pierce the horizon, bathing the village in a soft golden glow. Your village is a cluster of mud brick homes, their flat roofs crowded with drying crops, barley, lentils. In dates soar the occasional sleeping family seeking the cooler night air. The air hums with the faint sounds of stirring life, the low bleating of goats tethered nearby, the creak of a wooden cart being pushed along a rutted path, the distant murmur of a neighbor fetching water from a communal well. The ground beneath your feet is dry and powdery, kicking up small clouds of dust with each step, and the air carries the faint musky scent of livestock and the sweet decay of riverbank reeds. Your day begins with urgency, for the fields await, and the rhythm of your life is dictated by the needs of the barley crops that sustain your village. You walk along a narrow, dusty path toward the fields. Passing other farmers already at work, their silhouettes bent against the rising sun. The air is alive with the buzz of flies, drawn to the sweat on your brow and the damp patches of irrigated land. You carry a simple Tula wooden hoe with a sharpened flint blade, its handle worn smooth from years of use, fitting uncomfortably in your calloused hands. The fields stretch before you, a patchwork of green shoots and cracked earth, fed by a network of irrigation canals that you and your neighbors painstakingly maintain. The Euphrates, the lifeblood of your world, glimmers in the distance. Its waters both a blessing and a curse. It nourishes the crops, but a sudden flood could sweep away months of labor, while a drought could leave your fields barren, your family hungry. You begin your work, dragging the hoe through the soil to clear weeds or reinforce the canal banks. The sun climbs higher, its heat pressing against your back like a heavy hand, and sweat beads on your skin, stinging your eyes and leaving trails through the dust on your face. The labor is backbreaking, each swing of the hoe sending a dull ache through your shoulders and down your spine. The repetitive motion becomes a kind of meditative rhythm, though it's born of necessity rather than choice. The fields are not silent. There's the chirp of insects, the splash of water as you divert it into channels, the occasional shout of a child chasing a stray goat. These sounds blend into a timeless hum, a backdrop to the constant struggle of coaxing life from the earth. Your hands, rough and calloused, bear the scars of this work, small cuts from sharp reeds, blisters from gripping the hoe, and the ever-present grit embedded under your nails. As the morning wears on, you pause to inspect the irrigation channels, ensuring the water flows evenly to the thirsty crops. The canals are a marvel of collective effort. Their banks reinforced with mud and straw, but they require constant maintenance. You kneel to pack more earth into a crumbling section, your fingers sinking into the cool, damp soil, its texture a fleeting relief against the heat. The work is relentless, and your body protests a twinge in your lower back, the burn of strained muscles, the itch of dust caked on your skin. You glance at the sky, judging the sun's position, knowing there's still hours of labor ahead before you can rest. By midday, the heat is stifling, and you seek the shade of a lone palm tree, its fronds casting dappled shadows on the ground. You sit cross-legged and eat a simple meal from a clay bowl, a thick porridge of barley, slightly gritty from the stone-ground grain, flavored with a few wild onions you gathered near the river. The taste is plain, familiar, and unchanging, a staple that fills your stomach but offers little comfort. You sip from a clay cup filled with water from the canal, its faint, muddy taste a reminder that clean water is a luxury you rarely enjoy. As you eat, you feel the weight of the day's labor settling into your bones. The dull ache in your shoulders, the soreness in your hands, flies buzz around you, persistent and maddening, and you brush them away with a weary hand. The brief rest is a necessity, not a luxury, for the fields demand your return. You rise and resume your work, now turning to the task of weeding the barley fields. The shoots are fragile, easily choked by wild grasses, and you move carefully, pulling weeds by hand or slicing them with your hoe. The sun beats down, and the air shimmers with heat, carrying the faint, sweet scent of ripening barley mixed with the earthy temps of the riverbank. Your thoughts drift to the constant fear that hangs over you like the sun itself. The fear of crop failure. If the harvest falls short, you'll have little to offer the temple or the city's granaries, which demand a share of your yield as tax. Falling behind could mean borrowing grain at terms that bind you to years of debt, or worse, facing the overseers who enforce the city's laws. You've heard whispered tales of farmers driven to desperation, their fields seized, their families forced to labor for others. Even in good years, the work is unending, repairing tools, mending canal banks, guarding against pests like locusts that could strip your fields bare in hours. The river, for all its gifts, is unpredictable. You've seen its waters swell without warning, swallowing fields in a muddy torrent, or recede to a trickle, leaving the earth cracked and lifeless. You pause to wipe your brow, gazing at the Euphrates in the distance, its surface glinting like polished bronze. It's both your lifeline and your adversary, and you've learned to respect its power. You recall stories of neighbors who lost everything to a flood, their homes reduced to sodden ruins, their crops buried under silt. Yet you have no choice but to rely on its waters, to pray to the gods An, Enlil, and K for balance, for mercy. As the afternoon wanes, you turn to another task, harvesting reeds from the riverbank to repair your home's roof or weave new mats. The reeds are tall and sharp, cutting your hands as you work, and the marshy ground sucks at your feet, leaving them caked in mud. The air here is thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying vegetation, and mosquitoes hum around you, their bites adding to the day's discomfort. You work methodically, bundling the reeds, knowing they'll serve as both shelter and tool in the days to come. The labor is slow, deliberate, and your body feels heavier with each passing hour. As evening falls, the air cools slightly, though it remains heavy with the scent of earth and smoke from village hearths. You return home, your sandals slapping against the dusty path, your kilt stiff with dried sweat and dirt. Your family awaits in the small mud-brick house, their faces lit by the soft glow of the hearth. You share a quiet meal, more barley porridge, perhaps with a handful of dried dates for sweetness, a rare treat. The clay pots clink softly as you eat, and the conversation is sparse, shaped by exhaustion and the weight of tomorrow's tasks. The walls of your home offer little comfort, their rough surfaces cold against your back as you sit. Outside, the village settles into silence, broken only by the occasional bark of a dog or the cry of a night bird. You lie down on your reed mat, the fibers creaking under your weight, and stare up at the low ceiling, its mud brick surface cracked from years of heat and rain. Sleep comes quickly, not because you're at peace, but because your body demands it. The stars outside burn bright in a sky unmarred by city lights, but you have little time to gaze at them. Tomorrow will bring the same routine, the same struggle, the same rhythm of survival, a cycle as unending as the flow of the Euphrates. This was the life of a Sumerian farmer, a life of toil and resilience, where every day tested your endurance against the land, the river, and the demands of survival. As you imagine yourself drifting back to the present, let the weight of their struggles linger, a quiet reminder of the human spirit's persistence. We'll carry this sense of endurance forward as we turn to our next story. One of ambition and conquest, of a man who rose from nothing to shape an empire. The rise and fall of Sargon of Akkad as the sun sets over the Sumerian village where the rhythm of labor shapes. Every day let your mind drift to a different figure in this ancient world, a man whose name would echo through the ages, not for his toil in the fields, but for his ambition to forge something greater. This is the story of Sargon of Akkad, a man who rose from obscure beginnings to become the architect of the world's first empire, uniting the fractious city-states of Mesopotamia under a single banner. His life, woven with legend and tempered by the challenges of power, unfolds slowly, a tale of resilience and vision told in the quiet, reflective tones of history. Settle in and let this story carry you deeper into the past, as the details of Sargon's journey unfold like the gentle flow of the Euphrates. Imagine a time around 2334 BCE, when the city-states of Sumeru, your Legash, stood as independent powers, each vying for dominance. Their rulers clashing over fertile lands and trade routes. Into this fragmented world, a child was born, his origins shrouded in mystery. According to the tales etched in cuneiform, Sargon's story begins with a humble, almost mythical birth. His mother, said to be a priestess, bore him in secret and placed him in a reed basket, sealing it with bitumen to protect him from the river's current. She set him adrift on the Euphrates, entrusting his fate to the gods. The basket drifted through the reeds, carried by the river's gentle sway, until it was found by a water drawer named Aki, who raised the boy as his own. This tale, whether truth or legend, paints Sargon as a child of destiny, touched by the divine, yet rooted in the simplicity of the land. As a young man, Sargon grew up in the shadow of Kish, a powerful city-state. He was not born to wealth or status, but to a life of service, perhaps tending gardens or carrying water. His hands roughened by labor, much like the farmers of the villages we've explored, yet within him burned a quiet ambition, a spark that set him apart. The records are sparse, but they suggest he found favor with the king of Kish, perhaps as a trusted servant or a cupbearer, a role that placed him close to power. The city of Kish was a bustling hub, its mud-brick walls enclosing markets filled with the chatter of traders, the scent of spices, and the clink of copper tools. Here Sargon learned the ways of politics and war, observing the rivalries between city-states, the delicate balance of alliances, and the ever-present threat of betrayal. His rise began modestly with a position as a local leader in Kish, though the details of how he gained this role remain unclear. Perhaps it was his cunning, his ability to inspire loyalty, or simply the favor of fortune. By his early adulthood, Sargon had gathered followers, men drawn to his vision of a unified Mesopotamia. He looked beyond the walls of Kish to the fractured landscape of Sumer, where cities like Uruk and Umma waged petty wars over water rights and borders. The constant struggle for dominance weakened them all, and Sargon saw an opportunity. With a small but loyal band, he began to challenge the established order, his actions deliberate, his strategies patient. His first great conquest was the city of Uruk, a jewel of Sumer with its towering ziggurat and bustling markets. Imagine Sargon standing before its gates, not with the fanfare of a conqueror, but with the quiet determination of a man who knew the weight of his ambition. The battle for Uruk was not a single clash, but a series of maneuver sieges, negotiations and alliances that wore down its defenses. When Uruk fell, Sargon did not raise it, but claimed its loyalty, appointing trusted allies to govern while preserving its temples and trade. This was his genius, not destruction, but unification, binding cities to his will through a mix of force and diplomacy. From Uruk, Sargon's reach extended, city by city, Lagash, Amma, Niprich, falling under his banner. The Akkadian Empire, as it came to be known, was born not in a single moment, but through years of relentless effort. Picture him traveling the dusty roads between cities, his cloak stained with the earth of the plains, meeting with local rulers, offering terms of peace or the threat of war. His army, though modest at first, grew with each victory. Swelled by warriors from conquered cities who saw in Sargon a leader who could bring stability, he introduced standard measures for trade, a shared language for administration, and a network of roads that tied his empire together, ensuring goods and messages flowed as freely as the rivers. Yet power brought its own burdens. The city-states, proud and independent, chafed under Akkadian rule. Rebellions flared, particularly in the south, where Sumer-Besa's system. Sumerian rulers demanded tribute, their loyalty often wavering. Sargon faced constant challenges to his authority, requiring him to quell uprisings with a combination of military might and strategic marriages to bind local elites to his cause. His court became a center of administration, with scribes recording his decrees on clay tablets, their stylus marks preserving his legacy. But the rebellions persisted, a reminder of the fragility of his empire. Imagine him, late in his reign, standing on the walls of Akkad, his capital, gazing out over the plains, knowing that his dream of unity could unravel with a single misstep. The constant struggle to maintain control weighed on him, much like the farmer's struggle against the river's whims. Sargon's later years were marked by efforts to secure his legacy. He appointed his daughter Enheduanna as high priestess of Yor, a role that blended spiritual and political power. Her poetry, some of the earliest known in history, praised the gods in her father's reign, etching his name into the cultural memory of Mesopotamia. But the empire he built was vast and unwieldy, stretching from the Persian Gulf to the northern mountains. Maintaining it required constant campaigns, draining resources and lives. The records speak of battles where lives were lost, not in glorious triumph, but in the slow, grinding cost of ambition. Sargon's enemies were many rival kings, resentful nobles, and distant tribes who saw his rule as an imposition. Yet he pressed on, driven by a vision of a world where the river's bounty could be shared, not fought over. His death, around 2279 BCE, is shrouded in as much mystery as his birth. Some say he died in battle, others in his palace, surrounded by advisors and wealth. What is certain is that his empire faltered without him. His sons, Ramush and Manishtushu, faced rebellions, and within a century, the Akkadian Empire began to fracture, its cities reclaiming their independence. Sargon's legacy, though, endured not in the empire's borders, but in the idea of unity, a vision that would inspire later rulers. As you picture him, a man of humble origins who dared to dream beyond the fields, let his story settle into your mind, a tale of ambition tempered by the weight of power. As we leave Sargon's world, where empires rose and fell like the tides of the Euphrates, we turn to a different kind of legacy, one not of conquest, but of mystery. The Sumerian king list, a record etched in clay, holds secrets that still puzzle those who study the past. Let's explore its enigmatic tales as the night carries us deeper into history's quiet embrace.
The mystery of the Sumerian king list as the story of Sargon fades, his empire a fleeting mark on the vast canvas of Mesopotamia. Let your mind drift to a quieter enigma, one etched not in conquest, but in the delicate scratches of a scribe's stylus. We turn now to the Sumerian king list, a cuneiform record that blends history and myth, spring tales of kings who ruled for thousands of years. This ancient text, discovered on crumbling clay tablets, offers a window into how the Sumerians saw their past, a past where gods and mortals intertwined, where time itself seems to stretch beyond comprehension. As we explore this mystery, let the gentle rhythm of its questions and the allure of the unknown guide you deeper into the soothing embrace of history, perfect for drifting toward sleep. Imagine a scribe, seated in the dim light of a mud brick room in the city of Nippur. Around 2000 BCE, the air is thick with the scent of damp clay and burning oil. The only sounds, the soft scratch of his reed stylus against a tablet and the distant hum of the bustling city. Before him lies the task of recording the Sumerian king list, a chronicle of rulers who governed the cities of Sumer and Akkad from the dawn of time to the scribe's own era. The tablet, still soft and pliable, captures names, reigns, and cities, each entry a thread in the tapestry of Mesopotamian memory. But as we read this list today, uncovered by archaeologists in the sands of modern Iraq, it raises more questions than answers. Why do some kings reign for tens of thousands of years? Was this a historical record, a religious text, or something else entirely? Let's wander through its mysteries as the past unfolds like a dream. The Sumerian king list begins with a claim that sets it apart from any modern history book. Kingship, it says, was lowered from heaven to the city of Eridu, the first kings. like Ululim of Eridu, are said to have ruled for 28,800 years, their reigns stretching into a mythical past. Picture Eridu, a city of mud bricks, ziggurats, and shimmering canals, where the first ruler sat, perhaps as a priest-king, mediating between gods and people. The list names 8 such kings before a great flood, deluge that mirrors stories found in later traditions, like the Epic of Gilgamesh or the Bible. These antediluvian kings, with their impossible reigns, seem to belong to a realm of legend. Yet the list transitions seamlessly to more familiar names, like those of Uruk and Kish, where reigns shrank to decades closer to human lifespans. This blend of myth and history is the heart of the list's enigma, a puzzle that invites us to wonder without demanding answers. Archaeologists have unearthed fragments of the king list on multiple tablets, some found in Nippur's temple archives, others scattered across ancient cities like Larsa and Babylon. Picture the moment of discovery. A modern excavator, brushing away centuries of dust, reveals a cracked tablet, its wedge-shaped script still legible. These tablets, dating from the early 2nd millennium BCE, vary slightly in their details, some add kings. Others omit them, but they share a common thread, a desire to connect the present to a divine past. Scholars have pored over these fragments, piecing together a timeline that spans centuries, yet the long reigns defy logic. One theory suggests these numbers were symbolic, perhaps tied to Sumerian mathematics, which used a base 60 system. A reign of 28,800 years could be a poetic exaggeration, a way to honor a ruler's greatness by assigning numbers that evoke eternity, or perhaps they reflect a cultural belief in a golden age. When gods walked among men, their reigns measured not in years, but in cosmic cycles. Another possibility is that the king list served a political purpose. Imagine a ruler in a later dynasty, seeking to legitimize his power. By commissioning a scribe to record a lineage stretching back to divine origins, he could claim his rule was part of a sacred tradition. The list often notes when kingship moved from one city to another, Kish to Uruk, Uruk to Uraz, if power itself was a gift passed by the gods. This could have been propaganda, a way to unify rival cities under a shared history, much as Sargon sought to unify them through conquest. Yet the list's tone is not boastful. It is methodical, almost serene, listing names and numbers with the precision of a temple ledger. This calm recitation, etched in clay, makes it a perfect subject for our journey tonight, its mysteries unfolding without urgency, inviting contemplation rather than resolution. The archaeological context deepens the enigma. Excavations at sites like Nippur have uncovered not just the king list, but thousands of cuneiform tablets records of trade, laws, and prayers. These tablets, stored in temple libraries, suggest a culture obsessed with recording, preserving knowledge for posterity. Yet the king list stands out, its blend of fact and myth defying easy categorization. Some kings, like Gilgamesh of Uruk, appear both in the list and in epic poetry. Their reigns 126 years, for Gilgamesh blurring the line between history and legend. Archaeologists have found evidence of real cities mentioned in the list, like Uruk's massive walls or Urus' royal tombs, but no trace of the antediluvian kings. Are they purely mythical, or do they hint at a forgotten prehistory, lost to floods or time? The absence of answers is part of the list's allure, a quiet invitation to ponder the unknown. Consider the cultural practices woven into this mystery. The Sumerians revered their gods An, Enlil. En and An saw their kings as intermediaries, chosen to maintain cosmic order. The king list reflects this, framing kingship as a divine gift, its longevity a sign of favor. Yet it also hints at human fragility. As cities rise and fall, their rulers replaced by new dynasties. The scribes who wrote it, laboring in the flickering light of their lamps, were not just historians but storytellers, weaving a narrative that gave meaning to their world. Their work, preserved in clay, survived millennia, a testament to their care. As you imagine their hands shaping the tablets, the soft scrape of stylus on clay, let the mystery of the king list settle over you. A puzzle that needs no solving, only quiet contemplation. This record, with its blend of history and myth, reminds us of the Sumerians. It's a desire to understand their place in the cosmos. Much like the farmer's struggle to tame the land or Sargon's quest to unify it. As we leave this enigma behind, let's step into a different world within Mesopotamia, one of opulence and ritual, where kings ruled not from fields, but from palaces adorned with the wealth of an empire.
Life in the palace of a Mesopotamian king, as the mysteries of the Sumerian king list fade into the quiet shadows of history. Let your mind drift from the dusty fields and cuneiform tablets to a world of opulence and power. We step now into the heart of a Sumerian king's court, in the city of Ur around 2100 BCE, where the elite lived in stark contrast to the farmers who toiled under the relentless sun. Imagine a palace rising from the plains, its mud brick walls adorned with glazed tiles that shimmer in the sunlight, a testament to wealth and divine favor. This is a world of intricate rituals, lavish feasts, and the delicate balance of power, where every moment is shaped by the rhythm of authority. Settle in, and let this vivid, tranquil picture of royal life ease you deeper into the soothing embrace of the past. As we explore a life far removed from the struggles of the village, picture yourself standing before the great ziggurat of Ur, a stepped pyramid of mud brick that towers over the city, its slopes gleaming with whitewashed plaster and colored tiles. The palace, adjacent to this sacred structure, is a sprawling complex. Its entrance flanked by statues of winged bulls, their stone eyes gazing out over the bustling city. You pass through a gateway, your footsteps echoing on polished stone floors, and enter a world of luxury that feels almost otherworldly compared to the farmer's mud brick hut. The air inside is cooler, scented with myrrh and cedar from burning incense, and the walls are adorned with intricate relief scenes of kings offering gifts to gods, their figures carved with meticulous care. The palace is alive with quiet activity, the soft rustle of linen robes, the murmur of scribes recording taxes, the distant pluck of a lyre played by a court musician. As a king in this world, your day begins not with labor, but with ritual. You rise from a bed of imported wood, its surface inlaid with ivory and lapis lazuli, draped with fine wool dyed in vibrant hues of crimson and indigo. Your attendants, trained in the art of deference, dress you in a fringed robe adorned with gold threads, each stitch a mark of wealth. Your head is crowned with a diadem, its weight a constant reminder of your role as the god's chosen. You step into a private chamber for the morning's offerings, where priests await with bowls of barley and dates, their prayers rising like the smoke of incense toward the heavens. The ritual is precise, unhurried, a daily act of maintaining cosmic order, ensuring the god's favor for your city and its people. Your meals are a far cry from the farmer's barley porridge. Imagine a banquet hall, its long table laden with platters of roasted gazelle, his fish from the Euphrates, and fruits like pomegranates and figs imported from distant lands. Servants pour date wine into silver goblets, their surfaces etched with images of lions and stars. The air is rich with the aroma of baked bread, spiced meats, and honey-sweetened cakes. A feast that contrasts sharply with the village's meager fare. You dine surrounded by advisors and nobles, their conversation a careful dance of loyalty and ambition. Their words softened by the clink of goblets and the gentle music of a harp. Yet even here, the weight of rule is ever present. Every bite, every gesture is watched by those who seek your favor or your downfall. Your role as king extends beyond ceremony. You spend hours in the palace's audience hall, a grand space with high ceilings and walls painted with scenes of victory. Here you hear petitions from merchants seeking trade privileges or priests requesting funds for temple repairs. Your scribes, seated at low tables, record each decision on clay tablets, their styluses scratching in a rhythm as steady as the river's flow. You oversee a bureaucracy that manages the city's wealth, grain from the fields, wool from the herds, and tribute from vassal cities. The palace is a hub of administration, its corridors filled with officials carrying tablets or baskets of goods. Yet this power comes with a cost. You must navigate alliances, quell dissent, and appease the gods, whose displeasure could bring famine or invasion. The palace itself is a marvel of engineering and beauty. Its courtyards are shaded by date palms, their fronds swaying in the breeze. Small canals bring water to gardens of tamarisk and myrtle, their scents mingling with the dust of the city. You walk these gardens in the evening, the air cooling as the sun dips below the horizon, casting long shadows across the tiled pathways. Your family, wives, children, and kin live in private quarters, their lives governed by the same rituals and expectations. Your chief wife, perhaps a princess from a rival city, oversees the household, her influence subtle but profound. The palace is a world unto itself, yet it remains tethered to the city, its wealth built on the labor of farmers like those we met earlier. This life of luxury, though, is not without its burdens. The king's role is precarious, balanced between divine duty and human rivalry. Consult omens daily, priests examining the livers of sacrificed sheep to predict the future, their findings whispered in hushed tones. A poor harvest, a rebellious governor, or a distant enemy could threaten your rule. The palace, for all its splendor, is a place of vigilance, where loyalty is tested and power is never secure. Yet in these moments of quiet, as you stand on a balcony overlooking the city's lights flickering like stars, you feel the weight of history, the same history that binds you to the farmers, the scribes, and the gods. This was the life of a Mesopotamian king, a life of opulence and responsibility, where every act was a thread in the tapestry of empire. As we leave this gilded world, let its images linger, the shimmer of tiles, the scent of incense, the rhythm of ritual as we reflect on the broader sweep of Mesopotamia's story. Conclusion: we've journeyed tonight through the heart of ancient Mesopotamia, a land where the rivers shaped both life and destiny. From the dusty fields of a Sumerian farmer, where every day was a quiet struggle against the earth, to the rise of Sargon, whose ambition forged an empire. We've seen the resilience of those who built the cradle of civilization. The Sumerian king list, with its blend of myth and history, invited us to ponder the mysteries of a people who sought to understand their place in the cosmos. And in the opulent courts of yore, we glimpsed a world of power and ritual, a stark contrast to the toil of the village. As you lie in the comfort of the present, far from the heat of the Mesopotamian sun or the weight of a king's crown, let these stories settle over you like a soft blanket. The past, with its rhythms of struggle and triumph, reminds us of the enduring human spirit. Rest now, and let the gentle flow of history carry you into sleep.
5, 5.